racial justice issues. And then returning to grad school, worked a lot with Latin American issues, worked with the issue of refugees in Central America, and later found myself for several years on the US-Mexico border, working on trade and environmental issues. And all this time, I think I kind of found myself pulled into these issues of justice and social change, and trying to find platforms for the voices of marginalized or underrepresented folks. And as a teacher in the last 23 years at Paso High, one of our, if not the most diverse high schools in the county, I've found a lot of value in working with students, Muslim American students, and the Dreamers, the DACA recipients, and undocumented students, to expand public awareness and student awareness and community awareness about their stories. And recently, Paso, like everywhere else in the country, is no stranger to racial conflicts and divisions and disagreements. And so I'm very interested in trying to find ways to understand and resolve racial conflicts in the classroom as well as in the community. And so I think ultimately this summer, I kind of shared with a lot of Americans, and a lot of you, I'm sure tonight, this sort of the frustration and outrage at the events, and I felt like I had a duty as a citizen and an ally to do my part, and that's what pulled me into this rabbit hole of research into the archives of local reporting about race violence, and I'll leave that there. Very happy to be here tonight.
All right, thank you, Jeff. We're very happy to have you. And Dr. McMillan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Dr. Leola Dublin McMillan, Director of Resource Development, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. It's a long title. We're working on shortening it. For United Way of San Luis Obispo County, local activist. And I think you asked us like why our interest in this subject, and it's really interesting. I was listening to Jeff, and we've been, doing background stuff and logistics for a while now, but a lot of the same things that brought Jeff to this work have brought me to this work. I have 4 younger brothers, 2 biological and 2 adopted. One is an immigrant from Grenada who was there during the U.S. invasion. And so,
you need to talk.
Yeah, I was going to say, I definitely want to make time later to hear varying perspectives. I am the daughter of 2 activists who went to college in Greensboro, North Carolina in the late 60s, right? So I tell people all the time, activism is in my blood, right? I was born in the sit-in capital of America. And before I could walk, I was being pushed or carried in marches and rallies and protests. And so I grew up in a Black activist household. But I also grew up in a Black activist household that was Muslim and predominantly Jewish communities, right? White Jewish communities in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And so that's such an interesting mix. And it's wonderful to have that mix as an activist because it allows me to see from more perspectives than perhaps I would otherwise. And so I think it lends balance to my activism and helps me make sure that my moral compass is always true north. And I do this work because I'm called to it. I spent probably the first 30 years of my life fighting it, but I do believe that part of why I'm on this planet taking up a carbon footprint is to make the world a better place in whatever way I can. And I think it's really interesting. I was emailing someone earlier today and telling them about the work that I do, and they were expressing that they were so proud. And I was like, yeah, I don't really do it for the accolades. I don't care about that. I need the work to be done. But the accolades are nice because folks like my mama and my aunties and all of the folks who have invested in me to get me to where I am, this is my way of repaying them and confirming that they were right to invest in me. And then I think about, and I'll wrap up after this, I swear. I think about the women that came before me, the ones that I'm related to and the ones that I'm not. And I think about centuries of sacrifice and struggle and subjugation. And I feel like when I do this work, their lives were not lived in vain, right? I'm doing something to make sure that future generations of everyone, but especially women of color and Black women, can fully understand that there were people who were diligently working to make their lives better. So that's me. Also, full disclosure, I have a dog that I adopted from the shelter, and she's super needy. And she has learned when I'm on a Zoom call that I'm paying attention to someone that is not her. And so you may hear her or see me comforting her. I'm sorry. If anyone would like to adopt a 10-year-old lab pit mix, please see me after the presentation. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Thomas, you're still muted. Take the mic.
So much for everybody being Zoom experts at this point. As I was saying earlier, we're so lucky to have two just amazing people joining us this evening. I do want to remind folks to make use of the chat box to be submitting questions. There will be lots of time at the end to turn more into a conversation. But yeah, we're just very excited. So I believe we were going to start with Jeff. So why don't we go ahead and pass the proverbial mic and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I just want to, before starting, really extend my gratitude to the History Center of San Luis Obispo County for your invitation to take part tonight. Particularly you, Thomas, and John Ashbaugh, who I know you've been involved in a lot of behind the scenes work here. And it's particularly a privilege to share the board of illustrious rectangles with Dr. McMillan, who very much earned her Congressional Woman of the Year award last spring. And I was there for that, and it was a nice
Come
event.
on. We talked about that, Jeff.
We did. I'm sorry. No accolades, but they are nice. Admit it. Anyway, I'm going to present on the racist attitudes about regional media coverage, and I kind of dug back into the Cal Poly archive. So I'll start my little sharing now. I'm going to share with you guys and see if I can make this work here. So I'm a high school teacher at Paso. I've been there 23 years, and I'm full disclosure, I'm not an expert on ethnic studies. I don't teach at Cal Poly. And most importantly, I think my lived experience is that of a white cisgender male growing up in middle-class coastal California. So how's that for credentials? But I will admit to some hesitancy when I was invited to speak tonight, truly. And I think the only thing that allowed me to accept was to feel like maybe I could, even one drop of, can contribute to some kind of a greater sea change. Anyway, this whole project came out of this awareness that has been growing in me over the years living here in this county, that that we don't have any exceptionalism, right, when it comes to the history of racial conflict in SLO County. And let's see here. I'm going to move this out of the way here. And we're aware of the racial covenants and whites only restrictions on housing and rentals in the county. And we know that for decades, Cal Poly and many local high schools, including Paso High, regularly included blackface performances at annual traditions and slave sales for money for causes. We also know that during the last 2 decades, Cal Poly, which I understand to be the least diverse of the CSUs, has made a lot of national news with the various racial incidents involving nooses and swastikas, blackface, and here in San Luis, we've made some news following the arrest of Black Lives Matter activist Tiana Arata. So I think I share with everyone a deep appreciation for the role that history plays in giving us sort of context and perspective for the modern era and today, and our present day, let's admit it, is replete with political division, economic crisis. You know, we got our global pandemic, we've got racial justice protests, and probably one of the most polarized presidential elections less than 2 months away. So that whole context certainly demands some understanding. And so I realized I needed some context this summer to understand that racially charged time that we're living through. So I began digging, thanks to a retired Cal Poly librarian I happened to meet in one of our pandemic walks in the neighborhood. He talked about this archive, and I, thanks to my wife Nancy, who teaches at Cal Poly, I was able to get access to this digital archive right around the time President Trump was about to have his campaign rally in Tulsa, which coincided with the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which was, as you probably know, 2 days of violence of whites against blacks in 1921 that resulted in about 50 deaths and destruction of more than 1,000 black-owned businesses and properties in the Black Wall Street neighborhood or section of Tulsa. So what I did was I went to Cal Poly's digital library. It's archives of text and images from our local Tribune and its various incarnations between 1869 and 2001. And I focused on reporting about race riots to see how our county reported and consumed news about racial violence. And the coverage was interesting. I mean, it was fascinating from day one. I was like a kid in a candy shop. It was very engaging to see these articles that were being read, in real time. The coverage for me revealed sort of common threads of a racist ideology very clearly expressed, and white supremacy within the laws and behaviors and reporting that I know were shaping American attitudes at the time. The term race riot and race war was used sort of interchangeably during much of the 20th century to refer to any violence between whites and non-white populations. And here in California, that really mostly included African Americans, Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans, and Mexican Americans. And I found over 400 articles between 1907 and 2001 that referred to the terms race riots or race wars. And yet the way we talk about racial violence is sometimes difficult to unpack. And I kind of get that in these events that I read about. We today would call them racist attacks or domestic terrorism. So we have to remember, and right now we have prominent elected officials saying that systemic racism does not exist, and a nation is divided, certainly over this term, even Black Lives Matter, right? So the first term of race riots was used in September of 1907. There was an editorial dealing with Japanese immigration. It was calling for a ban on Japanese immigration to the U.S. and it used the threat of race riots as a way to motivate people in support of that ban, talking about large importations of Asiatics from yellow nations. And then shortly after that, there was an article that said, if no restrictions are placed on coolie labor, the eventual result will be a race war of extermination. And then I found in September of 1907, a Tribune article on alcohol prohibition well before our national prohibition. But in southern states, it was arguing that, quote, liquor is largely responsible for, you can see that, the shiftlessness, laziness, and crime of the black race, unquote, noting that the recent race riots in Atlanta started in the bar zones. And in August of 1908, under the headline of "Whiskey Caused the Rioting," a candidate for US president is quoted as saying that the sale of whiskey in Chicago is, quote, bringing the bad Negroes up from the South. Then we see, let's see, an interesting article about an interracial, in 1911, an interracial boxing match that says, if we had been governor of Nevada, where the boxing match took place, the late disgraceful game of a Caucasian and a coon would not have been pulled off in that state, unquote. And it argued that the boxing matches between two races could only lead to race riots and bloodshed. And this was referring to the great Jack Johnson in that fight of the century you may have heard about. There's been some books written on that. And Jim Jeffries, when Johnson, who was a black man, became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And at the time, that race, that fight and the result sparked race riots. Angry white mobs outraged at the defeat of their great white hope in 25 states, resulting in 20 deaths. Let's see, the famous Red Summer of 1919 had a lot of articles referring to race riots and racial violence. Here's an example of kind of a typical headline at the time. That summer was a summer of racial violence that in cities throughout the US, and white mobs generally attacked black neighborhoods, burning many to the ground. Hundreds were killed, 38 died in Chicago violence after a black youth swam in an area of the lake in the waters off of a white-only beach. And in August of 1919, a front page Tribune article warned of the grave threat of race riots, saying they were engineered by anarchists and bomb throwers. And the article said that no community where different races abound in any number is free from danger. And I should just say as an aside, it's worth noting that a whole slew of reactionary policies followed that 1919 summer that led to discriminatory housing policies, redlining, racially divisive urban planning, and a lot of those things that we still see today as sort of institutionalized racism. Let's see, the first mention of race riots that I could find in California is from a 1930 article involving race riots in Monterey. What happened was in Watsonville, a mob of white men converged on a Filipino social club. They were upset that there were some white girls working at the club as entertainers, and the mob attacked the club. There were shots on either side, and a couple of people died, and that led to a number of subsequent articles. One of them involved a reference to that race riot and the racial conflict in that area, and talked about labor competition between white men and Filipinos. And it said that race riots were, quote, inevitable, an inevitable result of the invasion of California Oriental labor. And then in a January 26 article, a California official stated that the fact is that white men in a white country will not allow their jobs or their women to be taken by Asiatics. And then, of course, a lot of reporting around World War II and the Pearl Harbor invasion. And I guess for me, anyone who would question that connection between sort of racist intent and governmental action needs only to look at this series of reporting that went on in early 1942, about 2 months after the attack. Yes?
Jeff, I'm going to interrupt real quick. Did you mean to stop your screen share?
Oh, no, I did not. Thank you. Let's see if I can figure this out here. Am I? Sorry about that, Thomas. Am I out of the meeting now?
No, you're here.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. Technology. What are you going to do? It's great until it isn't.
Let's see here. Is this here? I'm seeing you, Thomas, but nobody else.
Yeah, you're in.
Yeah, I see you.
I see you, Vella. I'm going to, let's see, share screen. Let's see if I can do this again, you guys. Sorry about that.
Okay, I can see it.
Coming back? Is that coming back?
It is loading. Yes, race riots in California.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So I'm kind of back. I apologize. I don't know what happened. So we're back to this right after the Pearl Harbor invasion. You start seeing in the newspapers calls for the Japanese Americans, naturalized Japanese, to be removed from the West Coast. And so in a January 30 article, warned of race riots if Japanese and Japanese Americans of, quote, alien sympathies were not removed from the West Coast. And then 3 weeks later, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 that would, condemn 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry to mass incarceration through the West. So we see that connection between, journalism, public opinion, and policy. And then I guess as I'm kind of wrapping up here, this history for me allowed me to better understand sort of the role that racism played in the creation of our sort of modern American society. It allowed us to question, this allows us to sort of question some of the paradigms that we've heard. And we don't have to dig too deep to find that journalism is still experiencing a race problem. I looked up that 75% of mainstream newsrooms today are still non-Hispanic white, and half of the newsroom staff are white males. So the result could be an us versus them reporting, fewer stories about people of color. And then I guess conclusion, to me, the reporting in San Luis Obispo County reflected clearly the hate and the xenophobia and the white supremacist beliefs and institutions that were prevailing at the time. That a lot of the fears of violence that were expressed masked racist ideologies. The press coverage, I feel, helped sort of normalize and preserve white power. And I think right now the Black Lives Matter protests and the COVID-19 pandemic have for a lot of us exposed this sort of historic bedrock of inequality and white supremacy in the U.S. And we also see that resistance to racial justice movements and systemic reform is really deep and often leads to backlashes and reactionary policies. And I guess, and I'll just sort of, let's see, unshare here if I can, and just say that in conclusion, I guess, even though we don't see the overt, racist reporting today that we see so clearly in this historic archive, I would argue that many of the same forces are still at work. The archives show us, how racist ideas can be normalized, constructed, engineered, preserved through everyday reporting and language and mainstream values. And I would say that today, if we look around, many of our institutions in our county still are their churches, banks, news media, colleges, high schools, among the teaching staff and so on are overwhelmingly white, and perhaps the systemic racism is more covert. But we also see tonight and elsewhere mainstream institutions, in schools, universities, local government, historical societies, sort of embracing this challenge, this opportunity to sort of change the status quo that often has resulted and still results in unequal access and unequal justice and unequal opportunities. And I'll end there, and thank you very much for the time and your attention.
Thank you very much, Jeff. At this point, I will once again remind folks, if you do have any questions, please do make use of the chat box. We certainly will forward those along to our speakers. And at this point, I would love to welcome to the fore Dr. McMillan.
This dumpster fire of a year, I tell you. Just, I want to be great, computer. Good evening, everyone. I want first to start with thanking Jeff. Like, that was a pretty great assist, Jeff. High five, air high five. Don't leave me hanging. I'm sensitive. And I'm grateful for you mentioning this global pandemic, because I think if we think about contemporary America, we're in the throes of two pandemics. One is new, one's been around for a decent amount of time. The one that everyone's talking about is COVID-19. The one that fewer people are talking about, but that many of us have been talking about for quite some time, is structural or institutional racism, right? That is the bedrock of this country. And I say that living in a community where multiple elected officials have publicly stated that that is not the case here, as if somehow the fabric of this country has skipped over the Central Coast, right? Completely diminishing the lived experiences of people of color, including the indigenous people on whose land we all live. And so I think it's really important to ground my remarks in the lived experiences of marginalized people, and in this instance, Black and brown people, right? Indigenous people, Black people. Because if we're going to talk about the history of racial violence in San Luis Obispo County, we need to talk about how what we see in San Luis Obispo County is simply, right, like we're just a microcosm of the United States, right? This is, so far, a very successful racial project, right? I made some notes, right? So I wrote down why and how when we talk about institutional and structural racism. Well, the why is to fuel the machine that is America, right? You got to have labor. But the how is what we're talking about increasingly at the national level. And the how is you embed racism in every single institution of this country. You embed it in every single structure, right? And no matter how many folks would like to claim otherwise, there's not a single institution in this country that isn't built upon racism. There's not a system or a major structure that isn't built upon racism. And unfortunately enough, we're at a particular place in time where a lot of folks got time to do things like record what's happening in their lives and share it on social media. And a lot of folks have time to speak out and to begin developing really strategic ways of being an activist across borders and while adhering to social distancing regulations. And so I think that's really interesting. I want to, we're going to talk about racial violence, right? But I want to say something about that. I think when we speak of violence, largely, folks tend to think about physical violence, right? We think about gun violence, especially, particularly this year, right? When we hear about racial violence, we remember George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. And I could spend the rest of this time listing the number of Black people that have been murdered in this country as a result of physical violence. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough, I think, is the psychological and emotional violence of racism. And I think lots of times folks understand racism in the abstract, right? They've taken some classes, they watched a documentary, they listened to a TED Talk, they have this one Black event, whatever. But understanding race in the abstract is not the same as understanding it in the concrete. And it's not the same as seeing it through the lived experiences of people who have to endure racism every day. And I think every time we have someone who attempts to deny the existence of racism at the institutional and structural levels, I kind of smile, right? I don't even get upset anymore because I'm like, oh, so you don't actually know any Black people. That's what that means. Because if you in 2020 are going to go on record and say that there is no such thing as institutional or structural racism, I already know you're only talking to other white people, right? Because I talk to a lot of Black people. I read the work of a lot of Black people. I watch the documentaries and TED Talks and blogs or whatever social media things. I don't know these words. Anyway, I watch them. I listen to them. And I feel like I'm pretty dialed in to the lived experience of Black people in America in 2020. All of us know. And so when I hear people decry the existence, I just, I kind of chalk it up to a feeble attempt at gaslighting, and continue to do this work, right? Because it's real. I've never talked for 45 minutes without water. It's not gonna happen tonight. Sorry, Mama. I'm trying. So I want to talk about my experience. I'll start with talking about my experience here in San Luis. But I want to talk about my lived experience in almost 50 years here on this planet. So in the time since I was asked to give the Carnegie Lecture, let's talk about the instances of psychological and emotional violence connected to racism that I've experienced. On Wednesday, when I walked from my home in downtown to the downtown core to get some dinner, I got to an intersection where there was a police cruiser, SLO PD, and as I always do when I see SLO PD, I wave because I've been working very closely with San Luis Police Department for the last 4 years to try and heal, right, talking about historical racial violence, a less than satisfactory relationship between Black folks and law enforcement. So I wave all the time. Also, I wave because I'm not a dummy and I want to make sure that my chances of surviving a routine traffic stop are significantly increased. And if most of the folks on the police force know who I am, then I don't have to worry about being mistaken for someone else, or being accused of holding a weapon, or resisting arrest, or smoking a cigarette too defiantly, right? And that in and of itself is part of the psychological terror and violence that it means to be Black, right? You don't know when you could die, or for what arbitrary reason. Anyway, back to my story. So I see the car, I wave. I don't have my glasses on, vanity. And I'm not sure who's in the cruiser. And the officer in the passenger seat kind of leans forward and squints. And he doesn't wave, which, if you know me, when I'm doling out the love and you don't return it, I'm going to talk about you to your face. And so I said to him, Linda, you know it. I said to him, hey, you know you're supposed to wave back. This is because I've sent multiple emails to the chief of police demanding that she tell her officers that when I wave, they wave back. And he said, what? And I was like, it's me, Dr. Macmillan. Wave. You know you're supposed to wave back. And then the driver leaned forward and he's like, hey, I know you, Cal Poly. And I was like, I know you too. Right, so we're just doing this thing, being dumb. But the light turns green, and they're looking at me, but I can see the light. And I was like, hey, the light turned green. Y'all are holding up traffic. Move it. Let's go. Get out of here. Again, they laugh. We're blowing kisses. It's a good time because I'm there. It's automatically a good time. And then the car behind them, possibly two cars behind them, but I think it was immediately behind them. Car full of young white men downtown. They have no idea about the nature of that interaction. But what they saw was an animated conversation between a Black woman and the police. And so here we are, right? This is where the narrative is being mapped onto my body. So the passenger in the front seat decides, I'm going to use profanity. Sorry, Mama, I have to. The passenger leans out of the window and says, fuck you, bitch, because he's assuming, yeah, that's what he said on a Wednesday. Because his assumption is that since I'm Black and those are the police, I must have been trying to force my whatever leftist Black blah 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 agenda on the police, not respecting our boys in blue. I responded. I told him to mind his business. Also, I used words that I'm not going to repeat. But I crossed the street laughing because I was like, joke's on you, sucker, because if I call those police back here, it is not going to go down like you think at all. At all. And if I tell them what you called me, it's probably going to be a hate crime because I'm going to make sure they understand that it was about race. Good luck, right? That's a Wednesday. On a Tuesday, went with a friend to go pick up food that we ordered at Giuseppe's. Thanks, Joey. Ordered the food, came when it was ready, parked, put the windows down so the two dogs could get some air. Picked up our food, came back. And in front of my car, which my friend was driving, white woman talking to an older white gentleman, asking if he knew anything about the dogs in that car. And I was like, oh no, that's the kind that'll break a window for a dog. I gotta make sure she knows. So I said, hey, it's okay, we're back, they're fine. She didn't hear me. Said it again, still didn't hear me. Third time, raised my voice. It gets good, get ready. At that point, she turns and sees me and says, Well, you don't have to tell me like that. I was just trying to help you. And then, in that same tone, she proceeds to let me know that she was just concerned for my dogs. Now, mind you, I'm on the passenger side of this car. My friend is driving for me. He has the keys in his hand. Also, fun fact, it was his dog, right? She doesn't even acknowledge him, and he's a white man. So, she approaches me, and I was like, yeah, okay, it's fine. They're fine. And she approaches me and then reaches out for that condescending pat on the shoulder. And I moved because I was like, oh, she can't touch me because I am too cute to go to jail. And if she touches me in any way, I will fight her because I have had a very rough week, month, year, and I can't do this with her. And so I moved my body and I said, ma'am, please don't touch me. What? And then she dropped it. You know what? I knew it. I knew from the moment I saw you that you would have a bad attitude. I knew it. I knew from when I saw you that you would have a bad attitude, and I was right. I knew you would be a bitch. What are you doing, ma'am? It's a Tuesday night. You're obviously not concerned about the dogs any longer because we're here and they're fine. This is about you. This is about you being upset that I spoke to you in a way that you felt I had no way to talk to you. And you wanted to make sure that I knew that you weren't going to stand for any uppity Negro nonsense. I was like, you know what, ma'am? It's kind of a bad time in American history for this. I don't know if you know that. What did you say to me? Drop the B word again. I was like, okay, so I'm going to go. You have a great night. Got in the car, heard her call me the B word again. And I was like, I love you. Have a good night. My friend didn't even say anything for 5 minutes. Easily. I was crying already because I'm depleted, right? I don't have enough gas in the tank to be dealing with this kind of stuff 24/7 while doing social justice work. I can't, right? There's only one me and she's got too much on her plate. So I'm just crying because I don't even know, right, why I'm doing this work if this is what I get when I'm off the clock. And my friend says, wow, that was kind of a lot. She was really crazy. That was super sudden. And I was like, it wasn't. If you know how to see it, you would have known that the second she heard me, the rest of that interaction, you could have predicted it. Maybe not verbatim, but pretty close. And that conversation is what led me to realize that lots of people just understand racism in the abstract. They don't know. They don't know what it means to have to steel yourself before you leave the house for any number of those interactions and exchanges. They don't know the extent to which fear often plays a role in your life. When I first moved here, learned that my white husband and I should carry our marriage license everywhere, because when we attempt to do things like rent a car without paying an additional fee for a driver, because we were married, we were asked to provide proof of our marriage. When we went to rent apartments and didn't want to pay 2 separate application fees, we were asked for proof of our marriage, submitting our, I'm so mad at myself. I wrote it down, but I don't know where that piece of paper is. You know, it's not a will, but you turn it into the hospital. That starts with an A. Who knows what this thing is called? 2 words. Oh, Craig. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's a piece of paper that says, like, if something terrible happens to me, Craig, oh, yay! There he is! Craig, good job, Craigie. Advanced directive. You're the best. Boom. The other Dr. the lesser. I'm sorry. We all know I'm the better, Dr. McMillan. Good job, Craig, though. Yeah, like, even trying to turn in advanced directives, right? We had to do that because both of us were like, look, you already know. One of us goes in the hospital and the other is trying to claim that they have a right to make decisions. Nobody's gonna believe that. It's true. Whatever, that's what it means, right? Being Black and slow means in office hours as a faculty member at Cal Poly, telling a white woman who works for the institution and is in your class without having met any of the prerequisites that she has to call a non-binary student by their pronouns, even if she doesn't believe in that. And having her go to the dean and my boss as well and claim racial discrimination, and having me in the Department of Ethnic Studies, where we teach students that I, as a Black woman, couldn't be racist to this white woman, because that's not a thing. Censure, right? A write-up, an investigation, conversations. What did you say? Well, this is what you made her feel. Yeah. It means driving to pick up a student in crisis who lived off campus and having Cal Poly University police pull me over and tell me, you know, Black person, oops, didn't know it was a woman, and a hat and a hoodie and a Black SUV, that they ran a stop sign. So that conversation was fun. It went a lot like this. Joke's on you, I'm faculty and my babies are walking around this neighborhood, so I know I didn't run a stop sign. Also, I don't know if you noticed, this is a hybrid vehicle. When I stop, I capture energy. So I always stop for a stop sign. Also, it's Dr., not Miss McMillan. What were you saying? Yes, I do know why you stopped me. I don't know why you're gonna tell me you stopped me, but we both know why you stopped me. I'm gonna let you off with a warning. Of course you will. You probably notice the swag in the front of my car that your boss, the chief of police on campus, gave me. Having to always be ready to defend myself, to defend my integrity, to defend my right to even be here, to defend my personhood. That is what it means to be Black in SLO County. It means losing friends because you tell them that their Black friend who holds multiple degrees and is published and is a native English speaker is obviously articulate, and maybe they shouldn't stop bringing that up every time they mention him, because the only reason they're remarking on the extent to which this man is articulate is because he's Black, and the assumption is that he wouldn't be as a Black person. There's a couple of folks on this call that are also on the mayor of Paso, Steve Martin, great guy, on his diversity panel. And right now, we're dealing with the fact that one of the initial members of that diversity panel, also coincidentally on the Paso Robles School District, or school board, let's pay attention to that for later, sent to the entire group, I'm gonna be generous and call it a screed that he wrote. He claimed that it was an article, but how I know he doesn't have any business writing stuff like that is because it's an essay until it's published, Chris. then it's an article. That's how that works. He wrote a screed about the myth of systemic racism. And he shared it with a committee full of diverse people working to address systemic racism in their community. And when the members of that community called him out, he did what white supremacists do all the time, doubled down, and he doubled down again. He's no longer on the panel, but I will say this. I don't know what the criteria are for being on a school board, and I don't know under which conditions someone can be removed. But I think it is incredibly troubling to have someone in a position of responsibility for public education for children to espouse white supremacist beliefs and publish them and distribute them through the county. That is incredibly troubling. That is not a person who should have anything to do with children, particularly with their education. We are already amidst a period of revisionist history. And students in Paso Robles School District have a school board member who is denying their lived existence. It's an issue. When we talk about why I do this work, those are the kinds of things. Students who return to school after sexual assault and have a white teacher attempt to have them suspended because she didn't look me in the eye when I talked to her. I feel like she's being disrespectful, right? Like, we're not still in slavery. There's nothing that says a child has to look you in the eye in a classroom. Also, have you never worked with children on the spectrum? Like, lots of times students aren't going to look you in the eye. This girl just survived an incredibly traumatic experience. The fact that she's in your classroom, you're welcome. The arbitrary ways in which Black and brown bodies are policed is nothing new. And that for me is the issue, because why are we still doing that? We have much bigger issues to focus on. And the fact that it continues and that it continues to be more sophisticated, and that we in this current period are surrounded by people who seek to justify our oppression and subjugation with the thinnest of justifications, is why I say, yes, physical violence is a thing, but we cannot overlook the very real presence of psychological and emotional violence. And I recognize how cold this sounds, but racialized physical violence in this country typically ends in death. Instantaneous. Racialized psychological violence, it ends in death, but not instantaneously. And it's traumatizing. And there's a reason people talk about PTSD and its connection to racism. There's a reason right now, one of the biggest things that I'm working on is getting racism recognized as a public health crisis in the state of California, because it is, right? Every single day I think, I don't want to leave my house. And I live in SLO. I recognize how great I have it relative to Black people everywhere in this country. And it's still terrible. I'm encouraged by how many people are on this call. I'm encouraged because I don't suspect that all of them are committed to doing some of the heavy lifting that is required to undo centuries of racial injustice. I like to think a lot of them are. And I've said, oh, sorry. Thank you, Cliff Carr. I didn't even read it. You know why? Because my time is precious and valuable. And as soon as I saw the title, I was like, oh, I wouldn't even grade this paper in a 101 class. No, you're coming to office hours and we're going to talk about what you've been doing in class this whole quarter. Because I know by your title, it damn sure wasn't your homework or paying attention. What are you doing? Do better. Anyway, so no, I didn't read it. Like I said, I'm the prize. I don't waste my time on that. Not even for money. I don't think you could afford to have me edit that. But I understand it's trash, so kudos to you, Chris Arendt. Anyway, it's going to take all of us, right? This is coalition work. That was for you, Lavella. Actually, it was for me for later when I watch this. I'm going to be like, ooh, yes, you did. This is coalition work. Hey, Janine! It's going to take all of us. And coalition work is never pretty, and it's not fun. It's just necessary, right? It's adulting. And coalition work means everyone that's willing to do the heavy lifting gets a seat at the table, and they get to talk. We just need to build a critical mass, and I think we're getting close. I think as much of a dumpster fire as this year has been, one thing that it has been really good for is galvanizing this country, and bringing awareness to places we never thought it would be. And I think opportunities like tonight, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, John. Give me, like another mile worth of gas in the tank to keep doing this work. Because it's soul crushing and it's exhausting and it's lonely oftentimes. But I don't know how we can claim integrity and a moral compass and look ourselves in the mirror and not do this work, right? In whatever ways that we are able. And thank you, Kathy. For those of us that want to do this work, but don't know how to or where to begin, just ask. Like there's plenty of people who are already doing it. Just go to them. I've never met an activist who had someone come up to them and be like, hey, your cause seems really dope. Kind of want to do it. Can you help me? I've never seen an activist be like, new phone, who's this? Can't help you. It's not our style. And it doesn't have to be me, right? There's plenty of people on this call that are doing good work. Shout out to you. You know who you are. But I'm putting the work in because it needs to be done. And because it feels disingenuous not to. And the more of you that join me, the better. That makes me really happy. Because I'm tired. Also that. Yeah. Thomas, time, how are we doing? I forgot to start my stopwatch.
We've got all the time you need.
I can take some questions if you like. Also, okay, sorry. Because I'm not super great at this stuff, I have a network of supporters that have agreed to like text me like, girl, there's lipstick on your teeth. Your side buns, your space buns are lopsided, whatever. So I have to check from time to time. Thank you. Okay, go. Questions. Or I can just keep telling stories. Happy ones, sad ones. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we
Your
have
time.
had, let's see, as a privileged 72-year-old female who only knows Leola, how do we integrate socially? I live in a bubble with others who feel like me. How do we
Vivian,
integrate?
is that you? Was it Vivian? Oh, Linda! I love how many people on this call I know because they're all so amazing. Linda White, everybody, she's the best. If you don't know her, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you're making terrible choices. She's the best. If you know Linda White, you know I'm right. Hi, Heather, I see you, but the sun is setting. How do you what, Linda? Oh, because you live in a bubble?
Yeah, how do we integrate?
You know me. You do all kinds of activist stuff. Unmute yourself. Do it. Push that button, Linda. Do you know where the mute is? Oh, wait. I think I can do it as a host. Hold on. Listen. Linda's the kind of person who goes on like, oh, hey, I'm going to be gone for a month. Where are you going? Oh, the Smithsonian has this like research cruise to the Galapagos Islands. So we're just going to go and study flora and fauna. What? Yes, that was pre-COVID, but still, she's kind of amazing. If you don't know her, again, find her. So Linda, you want to know how you can do stuff? I'll say this for everyone. My boss, Linda. Hi, Linda. Different Linda. She said people can show up in 4 different ways: time, talent, treasure, and turf. Everyone has at least one of these, I believe. Some of y'all are just balling like that and got all 4. Please adopt me. I have very few of any of them. And so that's how you do it, right? And I tell folks all the time, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but also it's true. Black and brown people are tired. Also, we did not create racism, which means technically that's y'all's problem. So who should really be undoing it? Even if you didn't create it, you're still getting that dividend check every day. So the heavy lifting is yours. Now, should you come to us for direction? Yes, you can think of Black people and brown people and indigenous people, BIPOC, as like the general contractor and foreman. Y'all are the day laborers. It's funny, huh? Mm-hmm. But yeah, time, talent, treasure, or turf. If you have a swimming pool in your backyard, that is the turf that I would like. If you are connected with the folks who issue the MacArthur Genius Grant, that is the treasure that I would like. I'm not even kidding. Linda, is that helpful for you?
I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if I have speakers on this or not.
You do. Yes, you're good.
Oh, good. But you know, the thing that I would like to do, because remember, you know, so long ago we would go out to lunch. That was my only interaction with Black people or anyone of color. Mm-hmm. And so here are all of us comfortable white women. Is it possible to get a group of us together and to talk, you know, about like the things that you talked about? We talk about, can you imagine what it would be like to be afraid walking down the street, or if you saw a car, you know, a police car in your rear view? But we don't feel that. And
Right.
hearing that come from you would mean so much more. You know, just getting like-minded people together.
You guys, watch this.
Mhm.
It's so perfect. She just like set it up. I'm gonna knock it out of the park.
Oh.
Fun fact, Linda. In my capacity at the United Way of San Luis Obispo County, I created this equity, diversity, and inclusion initiative. And with it, I created a social justice fund that we called the Liberty and Justice for All Fund. The fund helps support the work that we do in the initiative. And one of the things that we have included on our like framework of what this initiative is going to look like, community conversations and AMAs. Those of you who are like social media junkies, that's the, you know it. Otherwise, it's ask me anything, right? So it's just me on Zoom with y'all for an hour or two. Ask me anything about race. I did a really amazing one with the Women's March Slow folks. Super great. We are launching both a monthly film and reading series. So we're going to read this article for the month of March. And then we will have, virtually distant if still necessary, a facilitated discussion of that film. Or that article. Same thing for films, community spotlight. So talking about folks in our community who are committed to social and racial justice that you might not know, so that we can highlight them, so that people know where it's safe to go, right? Or where maybe they shouldn't be spending their dollars. And the United Way has a low power radio station in Grover Beach. It's excellent radio. I think it's KYXZ. Sorry, boss. I can't remember the letters, but whatever. We are going to be launching, I think at this point, monthly radio shows where the CEO and I just talk about something connected to social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the work that the United Way is doing. And then I now live downtown, so I can meet you just about anywhere for lunch. You know my tastes.
Yes.
Farm to table food and champagne.
Leola.
Yes.
Hi, thanks. It's Heather. Excuse me
Hi,
for
Heather.
jumping in here. Hi, Linda and all. Thank you all for this. This is great. Well, I think Linda was trying to get at, and I would reiterate, I love all of those initiatives and opportunities to study and so on. But to have the opportunity, and I'm with you, Linda, I'm not afraid. I'll go to a place and put my mask on and sit across, 6 feet away. I'm thinking of the list of organizations that you have shared with me before. You've called them marginalized, community members and so on, which is apt. And what if we could duplicate your effort, my dear, since you are tired and we know you're everywhere at once? We would all love to be in your party, but we realize there's only so many hours in the day, and maybe we could make it broader by inviting ourselves to meetings, to lunches, to hosting little tete-a-tetes, get-togethers with any of those organizations that would be willing to meet with us. And maybe the start would be, putting together a list of ladies and gentlemen that would like to attend a get-together like that, a social and an AMA. I never heard that expression before, but that's pretty cute. ANA. Ask anything. What?
AM, like Mary. Ask me anything.
Oh, ask me anything, right? I bet that gets very old. But after all, we want to hear, and you want to talk, and you need to say it, and so do some of these other people. So that's two sides of the coin. A list of people that really would love to get together and spread it among our circles as well, that's a happening thing. And then to know, if I don't run in those circles, if I don't have a seat on the board at the the Mexican American group of educators, well, hey, maybe we could ask them, be just right up front about it. with that list.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
And I would also say, number one, this town, so Abel, those of you who know, this town has no shortage of nonprofits. And there's also no shortage of groups who are committed to doing this work. I think I mentioned the Community Spotlight as part of our framework. And so that's a way for you to connect with folks who are doing this work. You know,
Community Spotlight is like that lists people, individuals that are being highlighted and we should get to know.
Yes. But
United
also
Way?
we at the United Way have a very solid social media presence. So you can like, subscribe, follow our accounts. And then, you know, if you're lucky enough to be connected with me, send me a text or email. It might take a while for me to get back to you, but the opportunities abound. And honestly, I mean, you can be as creative as you want, right? Like, I have a friend that lives in a community where folks are saying things on one of those like neighborhood snitch apps about the undesirables in their community, right? I don't know what it's called. NIMBY.com probably. But yeah, ample opportunity, I promise.
Leola, is it possible to get your email through United Way? I have
Absolutely.
Good, because I've got your old email.
Yeah, okay. Also that my phone number didn't change. Okay, so my professional work email is LD, I'm gonna say it and then spell it. ldmacmillan@unitedwayslow.org. You can just find me if you go to the United Way Slow website, but it's LDMACMILLAN @United Way, SLO, no space, one word, .org.
Perfect.
But seriously, Treasure is great. We are a very lean operation.
Mm.
Money piece.
Agreed. There are a ton of nonprofits, and we're doing the best we can. Let's see. How about a new question? The city of SLO has declared racism as a public health crisis.
I know.
Have other cities
You're
done
welcome.
so yet?
Have other cities done so?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was busy taking ownership of the city's acknowledgement. I don't know if you know that. That was me, Dr. McMillan. A number of other cities have done it, as well as I believe a couple of counties. One of the partners that I'm working with right now is the United Ways of California. Actually, I got a dream team together. I reached out to some of everybody statewide. And so I think we are assembling a really formidable cross-section of the state of California. But one of the things, and Linda and Heather, this is something, right? One of the things that we're already thinking about is moving forward beyond having racism recognized as a public health crisis in the state of California, right? Once that recognition happens in Sacramento, you're now at the now what portion of the show. We know what needs to be done, but we don't know how to do it. And because this has only occurred at the city or county level, there's no strategy or plan in place that's scalable for a state, certainly a state the size of California. And so one of the things that, one of the like 8 million balls that I'm just juggling 24/7 is getting together a team of folks who can really start drafting out a plan for the what next. And that's got to be, again, coalition work, because if we're talking about dismantling institutional instructional racism in the state of California, and if we're talking about addressing the mental, physical, emotional health of people that are affected by racism, that's a tall order. The tallest. And I know like 5 or 6 things. That is not something that is solely within my purview or within my area of expertise. And so that's something that's happening right now. I really hope that answered the question. That's one of the things I love talking about right now. So I will jump at every opportunity to be like, oh, did I tell you about this awesome thing I'm doing? It's awesome. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we have a follow-up question that I think is very closely related to this, about deconstructing institutional racism at the local level, feeling daunted by the influence of, I'll go ahead and say the C word, CoLab and other conservative groups in the area.
Yeah. Don't. I play chess. This is why I support compulsory chess education in public schools, right? Chess, for those of you who play it, you know, changes the way you think, right? You see multiple moves ahead, and for each of those moves, right? It's just this weird, it's not permutation, factorial. I think it's factorial, but it might be permutation. I'm pretty sure it's factorial though, right? Math nerds chime in. For every possible move, then you're thinking about like what could happen. And so you're thinking in this very concise and simultaneously broad way. Why I say that is, yes, you should be worried about it at the local level, but also that's why we start at the state level, boo. Because when it comes down from the state to the local level, who relies on state funding, you don't have to mess with the little fish. Why would you do that? I'm going to say it. You have to embrace your social justice, Karen. You need to speak to a manager. The local level, that's not the manager. That's why we're doing this at the state level, right? And I'd add, part of why I want to do it at the state level, and I said this in my remarks to City Council and later, historically, California is the most progressive nation in the United States. And we tend to set the tone for certain kinds of environmental, social justice type regulations. And I think we have, as a state, as a county, as a region even, and certainly as a city, we have all the things we need. We have every resource we need to try this, right? And it's an experiment, but nobody's tried it yet, so we don't know that it's a failure. And we're over 400 years in, and we know what isn't working. So I don't see any harm in trying something new at all.
No, the state level is good, and I'm really glad you got that going, the state level of the public health issue. But I do want to bring up a local thing, since the C word was brought up, CoLab, because Andy Caldwell, a CoLab man, bought and sold, is trying to take over Salud Carbajal's 24th district seat in the government and in Washington, D.C., which cannot stand. I hope you're all behind me on that. Salud Carbajal has been on the right side of every issue, and we ought to really back him in this fight and let everybody know. Sorry.
Who else? Question. Step
Well,
right up.
along the same lines, would you consider yourself running for office at any level, local, state?
Is that Dave Congleton again? I told him no. Who said that? I need a name. I'll check the chat window later. No.
I asked you that question.
Listen.
I don't know you, Dr. McMillan, but I thought you'd be a great candidate.
I think my swim coach is on the phone, like on this call from back home. Coach Fogan, if you're on here, I'm about to talk about you, and I don't care. It's me, Smarty Pants. When Biden announced Kamala Harris, do you know this silly man was like, just so you know, Smarty Pants, you could easily get vice president. I was like, who are you talking to? Here's the thing, people that I love. I am not shy, but I am an introvert. I do not like the spotlight. My dream is to be backstage, the clipboard, one of those cool Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation headsets, being like, roll camera 6, places. I want to make sure everything goes off without a hitch. I don't need to be front and center. That's somebody else's gig. Now, sadly, if you're on this call, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the demographics of our lovely community, which means that I am like star, understudy, what do you call that? Person backstage. No, I don't really. The most notoriety that I want is the MacArthur Genius Grant. One of you has to know someone that's on the selection committee. It's $500,000. It's $500,000 and bragging rights, because somebody that went to middle school with me got one already before me, so I have to get one. I won't say never to running for office. But it would take a lot of money, a lot of staff, and some really dire, like, Black baby Jesus coming to me in my dream and being like, it's you. You are the only one. I don't mind being someone's campaign manager or like PIO. I'll help you like write your statements, pick out your clothes. I could be like a valet, I guess. Not really. I don't want to do that kind of work. I could be like aide de camp. So no, thank you. I love you, Kathy. Wait, what office? How much does it pay? Do I get a swimming pool and staff? She went away. Exactly. I don't.
No,
Field off, Kathy.
I didn't go away. I'm laughing. I love it. Thank you.
You guys, I'm super nice. Why aren't you asking questions? What's happening?
They are asking questions. I'm not cutting you off.
Oh, sorry. You should.
I'm just for the sake of my 501c3, I am going to say we are a nonpartisan organization. We aren't taking specific sides on any of the actual elections, other than obviously
please vote.
Millen should run for something someday. And yes, please do vote. We're not going to tell you who to vote for, but please do vote.
Oh, I see you. City Council, Board of Supervisors, or non-local office. Okay, you know what? I do have a super serious response to that. And this is like the first time that I'm going public with it. For like a half second, I thought about doing the post-training course and running for chief of police. And if you know how I feel about violence and guns and the contentious history between communities of color and the police, you know what a big deal that is. But I thought about it because I was like, ooh, that probably pays really great. Also,
You get a uniform.
not just a uniform. I'm not telling who, but somebody I know that's a chief of police in this town has like custom art on her body armor. I saw it one time. And I want to get that.
Yeah.
I could make a new superhero. Her name could be Aphrodite with an F. Get it? And then she could have like Afro puffs. And then like Afrocentric jewelry and like completely misogynist, horrible, like female superhero outfit, but like maybe in kente cloth. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But I might in the like later. I probably won't though.
So how would you encourage historians to specifically address anti-racism?
I mean, I feel like Jeff's doing a pretty solid job. And I think use your voice, use your platform, continue to do stuff like this. I know that you are planning an art exhibit of some kind documenting the history of racial violence in San Luis Obispo County, correct? I'm not making that up, am I? No? Okay. You know, like, I just like to encourage people to be creative, like partner with a nonprofit. I don't know, the United Way might be one, who focuses on something like community strengthening and is committed to social justice. And then go after like a huge grant and do this crazy like WPA style oral history project. Por ejemplo. See what I did? Right out of thin air. I'm not writing the grant. I have too much stuff on my plate. Still though, WPA style stuff, right? Like we've seen things that work. Get a teaching credential. Teach high school kids. Start writing stuff. Find ways to use your knowledge to educate your network, right? Like, I'm not having Thanksgiving dinner with white people. But some of y'all are. And if you're a historian, find a way to weasel it into the conversation. I don't know. Like, be history Jedi. Partner with other groups. I really love collaborative projects. Part of what I love about this racism as a public health crisis project is that like people from law enforcement, people from education, people from behavioral health, public health, all kinds of local nonprofits all together, because all of us have a vested interest in dismantling institutional racism. And so I think I said this at the Women's March, find your people, right? If you're a historian, you know what your passion is. And if you're actively a historian, you know what your platform is. So find your people. Critical mass. Ooh, Lynette, is that a blanket? It looks so fuzzy and delicious. How dare
you? What organizations would you recommend people checking out who are lobbying at the state level?
Okay, TBH, I don't know, aside from us, who is lobbying at the state level. But what I would recommend, Rick London, watch what I'm about to do. This is about to be delicious. What I'd recommend is thinking about who's doing the work that you care about. And then checking out local organizations and seeing if they are part of state or national organizations. And then time, talent, treasure our turf. And I know we are about to launch our workplace giving campaign. $5 a paycheck, right? Pay up, put your money where your passion and your moral conviction is, and, you know, help out. Cause I got to tell you, like, this ain't part of my paying gig. And there's lots of people doing this labor, and it is a labor of love, but it often goes without financial remuneration, shall we say. And just ask around, right? A lot of folks who are nonprofits, they have like public portions of their meetings. Google like nonprofits 93401. Get ready for your computer to explode because there's a ton of them. But yeah, you can.
FYI, the Sierra Club is a national organization with 3 million plus members, and so they count the numbers, and we're always interested in people that take part. We have a very strong local and national, growing local and strong national presence for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it's like #1 priority, sharing the screen with climate crisis. So please give us a call at the Sierra Club and get with our committees that are working on equity and justice and inclusion. And we welcome all of you. There's plenty of room. Thank you.
Hashtag shameless shout out.
Yeah, well, I want you to know.
Sierra Club.
National organization, and we've got deep pockets for this work.
Any one want to say it? Janine, did you have an infomercial?
I have a little comment that was in the paper on September 1. What's his name? Sanders, John Sanders, elementary school educator in Los Osos. I think he lives in Los Osos. He's developed this school called Delphinius School of Natural History. It's Black American. The story in the Tribune broke my heart. I swear to God, I was like in tears that this beloved John is Black American, and he's racial profiled because of his skin color. I know, you know, and I'm ashamed that my fellow countrymen have called him out because of his skin color, playing with children, white children, in a park because of his little school program, and they called the cops on him, and loading children in a van. There's a black man. Anyway, so educators in SLO, San Luis Obispo Unified, how many people of color are educators in San Luis Unified?
I'm sorry. I'm sure it's not 0 because I have done workshops and trainings with educators in SLO Coastal, and some of them have been folks of color. But I think even without going to the education department's dashboard or looking up school board stats, you know, it's not a lot, right? I think, you know, if we all like put on our heaviest clothes as folks of color, Black folks might get to 2%. Right? We might be able to like inch the scale that direction. And there's not a ton of us. And the subset of Black folks and brown folks that are here that can teach, right? Have not just the credentials, but the calling, and then can get a job and can withstand like the micro and macro aggressions every day, 24/7, the second they leave their home, and depending on where they live, sometimes in their home, right? Like, this is not the first college town that is home to a predominantly white institution, right? A PWI, where I've witnessed a university struggle to retain faculty of color. Because people get here and they're like, oh no, I'm going right back to this place where they have winter.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I pretend those places don't exist. Janine, yeah. And I think as horrible as the horrific murders that we've been able to see of late, as horrible as those are, they really underscore how the advent of technology has really been helpful in this work, in social justice work, particularly in racial justice work, because now there's proof, right? And so for centuries, you know, Black and brown people just been making stuff up and exaggerating, and that's not really the case. Oh, it must have been something else. And yes, there are still people who, in the face of clear evidence, things that are unambiguous, want to introduce racialized narratives as an explanation. And I'm gonna issue a trigger warning with respect to gun violence for anyone that may be sensitive. I saw something on Facebook, and I'm paraphrasing, but some recent murder of a Black man who was shot, and the kind of reflex line of commentary came out, well, he should have just followed instructions. If he had just listened to the police and just done, you know, what was the law, he wouldn't have. And so the person who posted this was like, so by extension, what you're saying is every time a Karen goes into a store without a mask, it's okay to shoot her in the head because she should have just followed the rules and followed the instructions, right? Like, that's what we're doing. All lives matter, right? Every single person who breaks a law will be summarily executed, and we will turn a blind eye to that and declare that it was justified. Is that, oh, not every person, not all lives? Okay. Right, and it's this type of thing where critical thinking, right? We need to really start paying attention to what people are saying and interrogating it and calling people on their BS, right? Like, we just do. Because I will say this, yes, Black people dying at the hands of law enforcement is huge, but there's Latinx kids in cages right now. Trans women are being murdered left and right. Indigenous women are being raped on reservation lands by men who know that they cannot be prosecuted for a crime that they committed on reservation land, right? Like, it's a thing, right? And I tell people all the time, like, when we talk about equity, that means everybody. It just means everybody, right? When you take a privilege, like being able to move freely throughout the country of your birth or the country that you call home, when you take a privilege like that and extend it universally, it doesn't mean that people who have that privilege get less. That's not a thing. It just means it's no longer a privilege because it's a right. And I don't know, that seems super easy to understand, and I don't like, I cannot fathom why people are like, wow, this one thing that we have, we can't give that to those people. Why? We'll have less of it. That's not a thing. It's not finite. What are you talking about? Wow, how will we know that we're better than them? You're not. I don't, like, I want to get it, don't get it. Don't get it. Janine, I encourage you and other white folks who are on this call, right, to sit with that discomfort and let it motivate you, right? Because if that's not the America that you want to live in, then fight for the America that you want to live in with us. Because marginalized communities cannot do this work on our own. Like, legit, if Black people could have solved this on our own, we would have done it years ago.
Thank you.
Also, I'd be the supreme ruler. And there would be my tiara. Hold on, I forgot. I meant to have this on for the whole call. Damn it. Yes. People of San Luis, I bring you tidings of me. Okay, go. Who else? So cute.
I love it.
Thanks. Go, Thomas, go.
There's one that just came in.
White supremacy and racism needs to be understood in a broader context. Is that it?
That's what I'm just reading right now.
All right. I'm in teacher mode. So let's talk about using our words and being specific. Understood by whom, in what context, because I don't know for whom you are speaking, right? I certainly understand white supremacy and racism in the broadest possible context, which is global, at the global level. And I think most people of color on this call do too, and so do most of the historians and activists. So help me out, Mercury, and let me know who it is that needs to understand these two things in a broader context, and what specifically you mean by broader context. Please. And while we're waiting for that to pop in, do you want to throw another one at me, Thomas?
What else have we got?
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. So what the clarification that Mercury said is white supremacy and racism needs to be understood in a broader context. White supremacy has been a part of our foreign policy. Slavery, bringing men, women, and children from Africa to be sold as slaves, is the most obvious example, but also how we treat and bully other counties. I know you meant countries. And in some cases, even going to war, which parts of the world were colonized. So yes, which is why we say that racism is structural and institution. I think it's interesting, and no, Mercury, I'm not referring to you here, to see people bristle at words that make them uncomfortable, that aren't like derogatory or slurs, right? And I mean things like white supremacy, right? I honestly gave a talk last month. It's not funny. I'm sorry if you're watching. You know you're my favorite. But there was a gentleman in the workshop that was like, well, I don't like the use of that word. I don't like the word racism. And I was like, neither does anybody who experiences it. What are you talking about? Like, the only people who like that word are people who are that word. The word makes you uncomfortable? Dude, I'm not playing oppression Olympics, but I'm going to come out winning every time. Ridiculous. But white supremacy is how we explain colonialism, settler colonialism, imperialism. Like, what else would make you go to an entire continent where you don't have any relatives and be like, you know what we should do? Hold on, I'm going to go back and get my friends. We're going to get a map, and then we're going to play Yahtzee to see who gets which part. What are you doing? That's whiteness, right? With a capital W. That is white supremacy. And what I mean by that, and yes, super generalization, but like the power and privilege and entitlement that comes along with white skin cannot be ignored, right? And for folks who don't know about the partitioning of Africa, I just gave you your search terms, the partitioning of Africa. Imagine if a couple of like African-American men from choose your major metropolitan area just rolled into your neighborhood and started like kicking in doors in people's houses and being like, this is my house now, Sally, shut up, go make me a sandwich, right? Like, that's colonialism, right? You just show up on an inhabited landmass and decide that it's yours. And for years, you control the flow of people in and out. And then all of a sudden you're like, we don't want those people to come here. It's not even your house. You don't control the guest list, right? So yes, it is at the foundation of this country. It's embedded in most European nations. That's why it's systemic, right? I mean, I'll give credit where it's due. It's pretty effective. It's like the ultimate Rubik's Cube, because we sure haven't figured it out yet. We have not figured out how to undo it. Or we just haven't gotten enough buy-in. I don't know. Maybe we have figured it out. We're certainly not doing it. Hope that was helpful, Mercury.
Yeah, so I'm seeing lots of thank yous in the chat. Nomination for Supreme Ruler. Yeah, if anybody else has any questions or
things you want to know, you don't have to like, you can make your screen dark and ask. It's fine. Man. John, I'm just going to assume you're talking to other people. I have negative time.
Yes, I am.
Okay, I was like, what are you talking about?
But when you retire, that's when I got involved. Well, I still haven't retired fully, but I'm just making a pitch to everybody here in the audience who does have a little bit of time and would like to work with the History Center, especially after we reopen, hopefully, and maybe early next year. But meanwhile, we're making some adjustments too within our organization, which you and I have talked about, and Jeff and Thomas and I have been talking about too, to make more clear the fact that so often history, including our local history, has been distorted. Mm-hmm. So we want to kind of correct the record. We want to come to this moment with not a clean slate, but an search for understanding for all of us as to what are the roots of white racism generally, white supremacy, white privilege, white fragility. How can we correct that? And it's a long process. It's a lot of work, but I think all of us at the History Center are willing to undertake that work too. So
seriously, don't you love the idea of like a WPA style project? Wouldn't it be so good? Historians?
Well, you and I have talked about the question of reparations too.
Yep.
That was raised by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and others for decades now. But there is
even before Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah, yeah.
We've been asking for our 40 acres and mules.
Yeah.
Nothing. Comedians have done great work on that. Also, I figured out the reparations thing too. just in case anybody's interested. I basically worked it out, so it's
Very
great.
good. Maybe you can help us design that next exhibit. We are going to have an exhibit on the Jewish community in San Luis Obispo. That one's all shovel ready and ready to go. And the next exhibit after that is going to be about just the whole spectrum of people of color in San Luis Obispo. And again, dealing with our improving our understanding of our past and making some adjustments in the future for how we can look at this in more productive and more meaningful ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of what makes me so happy to partner with the History Center is it has become increasingly aware that just because of the nature of institutional racism, lots of folks haven't been given an accurate history of this country, of the social construction of whiteness, of race, any of this, right? Like very much revisionist history. And I like the idea of working with the History Center to help get that knowledge and information out there. I know my mom teaches 5th grade, I want to say, and a couple of years ago she called me and she was irate because her school district had recently switched social studies text, and they had purchased a textbook where the transatlantic slave trade was referred to as a cultural exchange. Yeah. She was, I mean, she has a Southern accent anyway, and the madder she gets, the twangier it gets. I'm not sure all of the words she said, and the octave. She's like, I didn't understand, blah, blah, blah. And who approved this book? And I was like, so, Friends and Family rate is $200 an hour and bill in half an hour segments. Do you want to talk about this now or later?
Speaking of educators too, we have Catherine Rogers, who's on the San Luis Coastal School Board, among our participants here, and I thought maybe she could address some of the ways in which the school district here is addressing the curriculum and these issues within the school. Again, when schools get back in business full time. But
also, thank you for hiring me to do some of that facilitated training and workshop with Slow Coastal. Shout out to my favorite middle school principal, John Calandro. Laguna Middle School. Okay, go. Catherine, it's yours. Oh, hold on. I gotta unmute you. Somebody needs to.
You do. Just hit Control A or Alt A.
Sorry about that.
Good. Okay, there
yes. You are. I would say the work that we're very proud of right now has to do with our Common Ground Task Force. So we have representatives from various minorities, if you will, various religious groups, various backgrounds and ethnicities. But I have to, maybe someone can correct me on this, maybe John, you can, but when you asked how many African-American teachers do we have, I could not bring anyone to mind. John, can you help me with that? No, I know. So I've got something to carry back from this, so much to carry back, but in that particular way. Thank you for calling me out on that. And I will definitely look into that for you, and we will hopefully make amends.
Well, I know, and of course, you have a lot of Hispanic educators now too, and especially with the emphasis now on bilingual education.
Sorry, that is.
I muted it until it's done. Do you give me the thumbs up and then I'll send the thing. Okay, you do it. Thomas, you might have to unmute her. Catherine.
Okay, there.
I can just, there we go.
Yes.
Dream team.
Dream team, absolutely. We'll see you back there.
I want to address something you said, Catherine, and then Janine, I think it was you, about guilt and shame. and denial. I actually have a slide. It has all three on there. But let's talk about guilt and shame first. I can appreciate that people may feel that as they begin doing this work of educating themselves and standing in solidarity with marginalized people. But I don't encourage you to dwell in those places because they don't serve us. If you're busy feeling guilty or ashamed, that means you're not busy doing the work. And if you're white and you've been in America longer than, I don't know, a day, it's totally understandable that you would not know the extent of anti-Black racism or any kind of racism in this country, unless you had to, right? Unless you're the parent of a Black child or the partner or spouse of a Black child, right? Unless you have someone in your life who routinely experiences these things and feels comfortable enough with you to share them, how would you know, right? And this country is saturated with messaging that tells all of us, right, who Black men are, who Black women are, who Black children are, who Black boys are, who Black girls are, who Black trans women are, right? Those narratives are embedded, again, because it's systemic, in every aspect of our culture. And so if you're worried or feeling crappy because, you know, you got 60 years of skin in the game and you're just figuring this stuff out, okay, so start eating better so you can live a little longer and get to work, right? We don't have time for your feelings. Get to work. Black people are tired. I know I am. So I wanted to say that. Rick, I saw a question, and I think it said, can cultural literacy help end racism? Sure. Lots of things can help end racism. Honestly, just having a solid moral compass and not being a lie teller. Like, even if you are literally incapable of reading, there are multiple formats that will allow you to become educated about the history of race and racism in this county, in this state, in this country, and like on the planet. And so, you know, especially with people being at home, what else are you doing? Watch a documentary, read a book, get an article, buy a subscription to something. I don't know. Listen to a podcast. If you ask Black people to do the heavy lifting of educating you and bringing you up to speed, you should probably consider paying them. Doesn't even have to be necessarily money. Sometimes Black people like champagne. Or expensive meals, farm to table type stuff. But like, you know, get in there, start doing the work. You don't have a lot of time. Look at this year. It's already mid-September. November is coming. Really educate yourself. You know what? I'm going to say that in a nonpartisan way. Please, for all that is holy, take the time to educate yourself before you cast your vote, because you're not going to get to undo it for at least another 4 years. And if you want to see a better world, then you need to be voting for people who are like-minded and making sure that people whose very existence is antithetical to what you believe in don't retain power. You know what to do.
All right. Well, do anybody else have any other?
Check out Southern Poverty Law Center website for resources. Thank you, Mercury. Oh my God. My bosses are going to be like, Leola. United Way San Luis Obispo County has an EDI page where we also have resources. It's my page. I don't even remember it. Volunteer, support, give, advocate, volunteer. Not just us. Lots of nonprofits in this community doing amazing work. Yep.
I like your 4 T's that I used to work out with so one of the not everybody's good at knocking on doors. Some people are much better at writing checks. That was her philosophy. So
I hate knocking on doors because people, introverts, no.
Yep. So there's
you
lots
don't want
of
me to write you a
support.
check though. Okay, last call. Oh wait, I see 2 things in the chat. Hold on. Solid advice, thank you. Why would increasing cultural literacy reduce racism? I'm sorry, Rick, I misunderstood your question. Right, because racism is this mix of, this is super reductionist, prejudice, privilege, and power. And cultural literacy might not necessarily address the power portion of that concoction, but when people become educated and when they move outside of their own narrow, homogenous communities and right in pursuit of this beloved community that Dr. King was talking about, and move from like this micro level to at least macro level, right, where you're looking from above rather than looking out. When people begin to see themselves in society rather than as society, which I think is the aim of cultural literacy, then some of that ignorance and fear goes away. And that's what is needed, right? The eradication of ignorance and fear is what is needed to eradicate the prejudice that upholds racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia, right? All of these oppressions have at the root ignorance and fear. And so, yeah, cultural literacy, which is aimed at reducing ignorance and educating people and having people think from new perspectives about folks unlike them. Absolutely. Bye. You're welcome. I love you. If you're on this call, I love you. I'm glad you're in the world. Be safe. Stay healthy as you can, to the extent that you can. And I look forward to seeing all y'all in one piece next time, somewhere. If you see me, wave.
Stubborn optimism. Stubborn optimism.
I mean, I'm trying. You're welcome, Shirley. You're welcome, Lavella. You're welcome, Cynthia. Hold on, I'm gonna say you're welcome to people. You're welcome, Linda White. Bye. Bye. I love you, Kaylee, if you're still on. Okay.
Yeah, so
welcome, Laura.
As much as people are starting to feel kind of zoomed out in all of these in these crazy times, I'm really glad we had a very wonderful audience. I want to make sure that we thank everybody. Thank you, Dr. McMillan. Thank you, Jeff Land. We're so happy that this was such a wonderful success.
Me too. We should do it again. We should have a quarterly thing.
Thank you.
Tell me when.
I don't know, 3 months from now. Right? That's quarterly. Don't judge me. I'm very tired.
I might just say that the Carnegie Lecture was intended to be a quarterly series, and we set the first one up a year ago. We had two subsequently, one in December and one in March, and we didn't have one in June. But I'm so glad we had this one this evening, and however we do it in December, it is our intent to have another one, and we will definitely want to
show up
to this subject. So
even as a participant, I don't mind.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Yeah, be active in your community, support people. Don't make it weird, but speak to people of color when you see them.
Absolutely.
Just say hi. It's fine. Like, it's totally great. Mean it and smile. Even if you have a mask on, your eyes move when you smile. So be kind. There's Black people in your lives. Understand that this is a terrible time for them, and do what you can to bring them some joy and comfort and safety.
Champagne?
I mean, listen, if you want, that's fine. I also like cured meats, local oysters. What else do I like? Stone fruit. Cheese. Cheese is my favorite.
I have figs.
No figs. I grew up in a Muslim household. I'm done with figs and dates.
Okay.
Too many. That's why I love things like prosciutto now, because it was forbidden for so long.
When my apricots come back, I think Jeff has some fruits in his backyard too. He backs up to San Luis Obispo Creek.
I don't even know where that is. That's how little I leave my house, and I think it's across the street from me.
It's across the freeway from you, yes. But
oh yeah, I've seen it.
We all of us, I think everybody in this group of participants does live in San Luis Obispo County, although I know that some people here work for the city of San Luis Obispo, for the school district, for Cal Poly, and a lot of us are retired or semi-retired in my case. But I really want to extend my appreciation to you, Loyola, and you, Jeff,
Thanks.
to Thomas, and to all the participants here. So we'll keep working on these issues and on this subject as long as it takes.
Jeff, two things. One, you should definitely consider like doing radio show with me on our excellent radio. Two, United Way's Youth Board is currently accepting applications, I think, until the 30th of September. If you have some promising high school students or anyone else on this call does.
That's a great idea. I'll pass the word on. We'll talk.
Encourage them to fill out the application. They can go online and get more information.
There's a lot of young people out there that want to get involved and make a difference. Definitely, I'll plug them in. Thanks.
Good. Absolutely. See, I did good, Rick. I'm still working.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, it looks like we're wrapping up, but thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jen Ford. Thank you, Sharon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, all.
I love you.
Love you, too. Thanks
I
again.
just love that waving has become a thing. You never waved when you were leaving an in-person meeting. But,
I do. I hug, too. Also, I say I love you.
Oh, I miss hugs. I miss hugs. I'm a hugger.
Same.
Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you later.
All right.
Take care.
Okay.